Here's one for the under-eaters. So I've promised a few of you this video over the last few days because there's a number of you that are eating far too few calories. Now, calorie deficit is massive in the industry at the minute, and you'll hear it branded around. James Smith talks about it quite a lot. And it is true, you need to be in a calorie deficit to burn body fat or to lose weight. But there is such a thing as too few calories, and a number of you are eating far too few calories to optimise the amount of body fat that you're burning. So you might still continue to lose weight, but chances are you're going to start losing muscle, and you're just not going to feel as toned and as firm as you should do. So the calorie intakes that I prescribe you, I've already got taken into consideration the exercise that you're doing, your age, your height, etc. I then add at least a 500 calorie deficit onto your calorie target so that you will get body fat loss results or weight loss results on the scales. I make it a sensible deficit so that we're optimizing the rate at which your body burns fat. What a lot of you then tend to do is add an additional deficit onto the calorie deficit that I've already prescribed you, and that's when things start to become really counterproductive and affecting your results and the speed of the results that you're getting. So what happens when we have a calorie deficit is our metabolism it regulates itself or deregulates down to the new calorie intake that you're on. So the metabolism is the rate at which we burn energy. It's basically a set of chemical processes that trigger the body to break down fuel for energy. And we want that process to be happening quickly and effectively. It means we're going to access the fat cells and break down fat for fuel really quickly. The same for the fuel in your system that you're taking from your food. What happens when we undereat from what our body needs, even in the 500 calorie deficit that I've prescribed, is your metabolism slows down. And it does this to conserve energy because your body's main goal, if you like, is to survive. So it thinks, right, we're not getting as many calories as we should, so we're going to slow down energy expenditure, and we're not going to burn energy as quickly, and we're going to slow some of these processes down to conserve energy and conserve life. What also happens when we undereat is your thyroid production. So the hormones that your thyroid produces are absolutely integral in these chemical processes that need to happen. But what happens when we undereat, especially when we dramatically undereat, is the thyroid production lowers and the hormones that it produces are fewer, and then we can't burn fuel as effectively. So it means that we're not accessing the fat in the fat cells as quickly and as readily as we should. We're also not going to gain as much muscle as we should because it's responsible for the uptake of nutrients and for the breakdown of nutrients. So we're deregulating our metabolism or adapting our metabolism to our new lower calorie intake, and we're also lowering our thyroid production, which is just not good in terms of optimizing the amount of fat that you burn and how quickly you burn. Now, there's kind of no avoiding it because you've got to be in a calorie deficit to burn body fat, but what the best way of doing it is to prescribe a small calorie deficit and get as much fat loss out of that deficit as we can. When fat loss starts to plateau, we leave a bit of room to bring that calorie intake down a little more and down a little more, etc. Once your calorie intake is at a kind of the lowest you would want it to be, we use a process called reverse dieting, where we start to creep your calorie intake back up to speed that metabolism and that hormone production back up again. And we approach it sometimes in a couple of waves of coming up with calories and down with calories to make sure that we're optimizing the metabolic rate in your thyroid hormone production. There's another few hormones at play as well. So we have two hunger hormones, or two main hunger hormones, and they're called leptin and ghrelin. Okay, the best way that I remember these is G for go is ghrelin. So ghrelin is the hormone that tells us that we need to eat more food. Again, they both play an integral role in survival. So one of them stops us getting too thin, and one of them stops us getting too fat. If we reduce our calorie intake drastically, the hormone that doesn't want us to get too thin starts to trigger hunger, levels. So it increases the hormone ghrelin in your system, and your hunger levels increase. So we're hungrier, we crave more, we're more likely to binge, we're more likely to crave sugary junk foods, etc. Because we're eating too little and our hormone production of ghrelin has increased, and it's telling us that we're hungrier than normal and that we must eat. Not only does it tell us that we're hungrier than normal and that we need to eat, it also slows down our energy expenditure. So it's a double whammy. You end up eating more but burning less. Leptin, on the other hand, is the hormone that tells us that we're full. So it stops us getting too fat. It tells us to stop eating, we're full. When we chronically undereat, leptin levels drop. So we lose that signalling of when we're full. So then what happens is when we do end up binging, we can end up overeating and having far too many calories, and then we end up with this horrible rebound effect. We undereat for a period of time, we slow our hormone production and our metabolic rate right down, and then we end up feeling hungry, unsatisfied, and we end up binging. When we binge, we end up having far too many calories, but we're having far too many calories on a system that's now not effectively burning energy. And this is why people who do yo-yo diets can end up rebounding and putting on all the weight, or sometimes even more weight than they did first time round. So I might sound like a bit of a broken record when I keep telling you to eat more and to gradually increase your calorie intake, but it's because we need to get your metabolism and your metabolic rate and your hormone production working effectively at the right rate for you. So most people will start on program on a fat loss plan on a 500 calorie deficit. What we then do over time, as your weight on the scales comes down and your metabolic rate comes down, we gradually creep your calories down to keep the fat loss coming. So you might end up on, say, 1400, 1500 calories. What we then do when your weight starts to plateau again, when you're on a low number of calories, is I'll start to creep them back up again. It's a process called reverse dieting if you want to have a look at it. And the process of your metabolism changing is called adaptive thermogenesis. So feel free to do your own research on it. But what we'll do is we'll bring your calorie intake gradually down to keep your results coming. And then we'll start creeping your calorie intake back up in 50 calorie jumps or 100 calorie jumps, and that's going to kickstart that metabolism and that thyroid production and everything to speed up again. And then again we might again bring your calories back down once that process has happened. It's methodical, it's to keep your results coming, it's to optimize your fat burning potential, etc. What you're doing, if I give you a calorie deficit and you automatically jump yourself lower than you're supposed to, is you're just going to shut everything down or slow everything down immediately, and then our only way is up. We can't just keep cutting calories to keep the results coming. So if you're only eating 1,000 calories, 1,100 calories, things like that a day, you'll hear me say you've got to increase your calorie intake. So there's a little bit of science behind it. If you want any more explanations or you want to discuss it any further, let me know. But if you're in that bracket of being on a fat loss plan and you're only eating 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 calories a day, chances are it's too low. You're very soon going to see a plateau on the scales. If you don't see a plateau and the weight keeps dropping off, chances are it's muscle. What happens is basically your body needs sugar or glucose for energy, and if you're not getting enough in from your food, you'll start to break muscle down. Your body will start to break muscle down and use the nutrients from the muscle to fuel your activity levels for that day, which we absolutely don't want. So it's really important that we make sure you're eating enough calories. It might seem counterintuitive to eat more to lose more, but please trust the process. Please gradually try to increase them if you're advised to, and if you're having any struggles, just let me know. The other couple of hormones to bear in mind as well are cortisol and insulin. So cortisol is a stress hormone, and your body sees chronic undereating as a stressor, and it will release more cortisol into your bloodstream. Now, a lot of us have a lot of cortisol and have high stress jobs. Obviously, lockdown and everything at the minute is causing high stress situations for people. We don't need to be adding more stress hormone to our systems than we've already got. When your stress hormone is high, it basically promotes an insulin response. Elevated insulin levels in your system normally contributes to more fat storage as well. So it's important that we keep our cortisol and our stress levels low, and chronic undereating is seen as a stressor by the body, and you will produce more cortisol. Other things also affect thyroid production. So things that we eat, if we're not eating, the right types of nutrients and things like that as well. So it's important to eat clean, and other hormonal imbalances. So people with like PCOS and things like that as well may have altered thyroid function. Hence the reason they gain weight a little bit quicker. And tend to keep it on longer. Anyway, waffling a little bit now, but there's the science, or a little bit of science behind why I'm telling you to eat more. Please try it. Give me a shout if you need any help.